I think next week they might, Sister Nazreen might ask people to share reflections as well. Okay, if not, we continue. الله سبحانه وتعالى بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله نور السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس والله بكل شيء عليم في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة يخافون يوما تتقلب فيه القلوب والأبصار صدق الله العظيم. Okay, I think we'll probably need to attend something. So we did the verse of Allahu Nuru Samawati wal Ard. We said that verse of Allahu Nuru Samawati wal Ard, the focus of that verse was on Hidayah, right? The combination of Hidayah in terms of the verses of the Quran and other forms of Hidayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, like the fitrah, like our aql, etc. Right? Nurun ala nur. And that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings the verse back to the fact that all of what was being spoken about before was Hidayah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Yahdillahu li nurihi man yasha. Allah guides to His light whomsoever He wills. وَيَضْرِبُ اللَّهُ الْأَمْثَالَ لِلنَّاسِ. And Allah sets parables for the people. وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. Or for mankind. And Allah is all knowing of everything. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that He sets parables here. Why? He set a parable in the surah. In this very verse of the lantern and the different layers of illumination within that lamp. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will go on in the coming verses to mention some more parables. As you may see here, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَسَرَابٍ. You see the ka? That tells you you're going to have a figure of speech, a tashbih. So Allah gave the parable of His guidance. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about those who are guided. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about those who are misguided. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَعْمَالُهُمْ كَسَرَابٍ بِقِيعَةٍ يَحْسَبُهُ الظَّمْآنُ مَاءً حتى إذا جاءه لم يجده شيئا ووجد الله عنده فوفاه حسابه والله سريع الحساب. And then Allah gives another paragraph. أو كظلمات في بحر اللجي يغشاه موج من فوقه سحاب ظلمات بعضها فوق بعض. So Allah gave the parable of light upon light. So in the coming verses, Allah is going to give the parable of darkness upon darkness. Right? The one like layers, going outwards, and the other one like layers of darkness going downwards. Right? So there are some allegorical verses here as well, but not as allegorical as the first one, Allahu Nuru Samawati wal Ard, because that one dealt specifically with Allah. And when you're dealing specifically with Allah, you cannot draw comparisons in the way that you can with other things. Because of the injunction in the Quran, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ, there is nothing like Allah. So any parable that you set for Allah, or any likeness, or any simile or similitude, whatever the case may be, for Allah is the added element that you have to incorporate in that understanding, and that is the element of transcendence. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala transcends any created thing, or the likeness to any created thing. But that same sensitivity doesn't exist in relation to things other than Allah, like the actions of human beings, etc. So those are parables, but much easier to understand and unpack. So what does Allah say? Right? وَيَضْرِبُ اللَّهُ الْأَمْثَالَ لِلنَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. Then Allah says, فِي بُيُوتٍ أَذِنَ اللَّهُ أَن تُرْفَعَ. فِي بُيُوتٍ أَذِنَ اللَّهُ أَن تُرْفَعَ وَيُذْكَرَ فِيهَا اسْمُهُ وَيُسَبِّحُ لَهُ فِيهَا بِالْغُدُوِّ وَالْآصَالِ. فِي بُيُوتٍ. What kind of sentence do you think we're dealing with here? Jumla ismiya, jumla fi'aliyya. Ismiya. But now if you're dealing with a jumla ismiya, you have to have a mubtada and a khabar. كان حرف الجر اسم مجرور به مبتدا? No. So this is our khabar. This is the beginning of our khabar. We still have to find the mubtada. Now, in this verse, there's going to be options for the mubtada. You can either, and I'm going to point it out to you now because it's a bit distant from the khabar. So here you can either understand the mubtada to be the lamps spoken about in the previous verse. الله نور السماوات المثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح. That the mishkatin, the niche, what is a niche now? It was that indentation in the wall. Right? You can understand that mishkat فيها مصباح, that is في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع. That is in houses that we will describe in the latter part of the verse, right? So it will refer to having niches in the walls of the masajid. But some mufassirin say no, that is not the most correct interpretation, because the masajid of Hijaz, the prayer places of Makkah and that vicinity, they did not have niches in them. Right? So the mufassirin who say that it does refer to that, they will say it's referring to Masjidul Aqsa. It's referring to Masjidul Aqsa. And then the people who are described in the latter part of the verse are the pious people from Ahlul Kitab. Keep that in mind, right? The other interpretation is that the mubtada is mu'akhar. Not that the mubtada is omitted, the mubtada is mu'akhar, it's delayed. So this is a khabar brought forward, and the mubtada is where? Rijalun. The beginning of the next verse. Rijalun la tulhihim tijaratu wa la bay'un an dhikrillah. So it will mean in houses there are many. So there will be a description of the houses, detail about the houses, and detail about the men. So that's why I'm pointing it out to you now, because can you see how far they are from each other? So it would be hard to pick up. Fi buyutin, that's going to be my khabar, brought forward, and rijalun is going to be my mubtada muakhar, my delayed mubtada. Everything else here, أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال, is the explanation of the buyut. لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة يخافون يوما تتقلب فيه القلوب والأبصار, is an explanation of the rijal. Sifat for rijal. And that's why I chose to do these two verses together. But it's easy to unpack if you can see the basic sentence structure first, right? So now let's see. So now the second understanding, which is the preferred understanding by most mufassirin, is that this verse is not connected to the previous verse in that it's referring to something in the previous verse. But the previous verse spoke about the layers of guidance, right? The layers of illumination, which is actually speaking about the guidance of Allah. And in this verse, Allah is speaking in these two verses, Allah is speaking about the people who are guided and their actions. As well as the next verse, this is speaking about the outcome. And in the following verse, we'll speak about those people who do not have the guidance of Allah. الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Clear? Is it make sense? Understood? So the one interpretation is that the mubtada is omitted and is referring to the niches in the walls. So the niche is in houses. You understand? So this fi buyutin will be the khabar. Where's the mubtada? It's omitted. It refers to the niches in the previous verse. The other one is that the mubtada, this is the khabar. The mubtada is not omitted, it's delayed. And it is that word rijalun. Right? So fi buyutin rijalun. In certain houses there are men. Now obviously the detail that the rest of the surah brings unpacks what the intention of the verse is saying. Yes. So fi buyutin, in houses. Now these houses are referring to masajid, or places of prayer. If you're referring to the ones with niches in, if you take that first interpretation, then some would say it's referring to Masjid al-Aqsa or places of prayer of the Ahlul Kitab before, who had that feature in their places of prayer. In Masjid al-Aqsa, there's many compounds of prayer. It's a compound of various masajid. Right? So fi buyutin, in houses. Now, as a description of that houses, when you remember when you have a nakira word, and I certainly mentioned this to you before, when you have a nakira word, you can often have that nakira word followed by a verb, and that verb is just telling you more about the nakira word. If it's a definite word, you'll usually have a alladhi or alladhina before you have a description. But if it's nakira, the verb will just come immediately after describing. Right? So in houses, adhina Allahu, adhina ya'dhanu means to permit. Right? Who's the fa'il of adhina? Allah is the fa'il of adhina. So Allah permitted. Now what's the maf'ulun bihi? What did Allah permit? Excuse me? An turfa. An turfa. Now you might ask me, hey, how can the maf'ulun bihi be a verb? Turfa is a majhul verb. Rafa'a yarfa'u, rufi'a yurfa'u, turfa'u. It's a verb. That an over there, it's called an masdariyah. Right? So you will have that an plus a verb, and it converts the meaning into the meaning of the masdar. So it's an plus a verb is almost like a noun. So it could have been placed with rafa'a. Adhina Allahu rafa'a, because rafa is the masdar. But there might be benefit to, there would be obviously rhetorical benefit to using an turfa'a rather than rafa'a. And that is that it's something that happens repeatedly. That in the present tense verb has that connotation of incompleteness, that the action is ongoing. So adhina Allahu, fi buyutin adhina Allahu an turfa'a. That's why it's supposed to be rufi'a yurfa'u, turfa'u. But it has an also because of the an. So what is the maf'ul bihi? This an turfa'a. But now turfa'a is a majhul verb. Rafa'a yarfa'u, rufi'a yurfa'u. Rufi'a يرفع. Here we have ترفع. So we're going to look for the naib al-fa'il now in a moment. So yeah. I mean, okay. First tell me, what do you think the naib al-fa'il is going to be there in turfa? You must look at the end. Don't look at the beginning. You look at the end. Is anything at the end? Nothing at the end. Then you look to the left. There's another verb there. Ismu is a masculine word. So then it has to be yurfa. Yurfa. So where do you look next? Inside. What's inside it? Now you can look at the beginning. It's either you one male or here. Right? Anta or here. Now what can the here be referring to here? Buyutin? So it's a plural of a non-human object. So that's why we treat it as a singular feminine. So in houses that Allah permitted that they be raised, meaning that they be built up or erected. Why yudhkara? The verb is dhakara yadhkuru. Dhukira yudhkaru. Here we have yudhkara. Why yudhkara? Can you see there's a wa before it? So it's telling you it's connected to the previous verb. An turfa'a wa an yudhkara. So Allah permitted that the houses be raised, and Allah permitted that be remembered fiha, in them, meaning the ha referring back to houses again. In them, what must be remembered in them? What must be mentioned in them? Ismu. So what's the naibul fa'il of yudhkaru? Ismuhu. Ismu, his name. So in houses that Allah permitted that they be raised, and He permitted or He decreed that His name be mentioned in them. Right? يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال. يسبح له. سبح يسبح. To make tasbih. Right? It's on the second bab. To glorify, to proclaim His perfection, His freedom from deficiency. So yusabbihu lahu, glorifies Him, fiha, in them, in those houses. It's a verb, yeah? We're going to come to that now. Right? Yusabbihu lahu fiha, so that lahu is extra information, fiha, extra information, bil ghuduwi wal asal, extra information. I was telling you the tasbih is done for who? Tasbih is done for Allah. Where is the tasbih done? In the houses. When is the tasbih done? Bil ghuduwi wal asal. Ghudu, morning. Asal, evenings. Right? Bil ghudu wal asal. So at the mornings and evenings. So it's all adding extra information to the tasbih. Now who's the fa'il? Rijal. Yeah. Yeah. Because that's why it comes after everything. Right? So who's doing that remembrance? Rijalun, people. Now why make Rijalun nakira here? And so almost standing on its own. It's as if it's separate from the whole verse. Because Allah is mentioning this fi siyaqil madh. Allah wants to venerate these men. Look, when we say rijalun, yeah, in the context it's okay. Let me say something. We're not talking about gender studies here, right? Oh, any alphabet stuff. But this rijalun, yeah, it can include females as well. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is highlighting the rujula. like the chivalry. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is praising them in this verse. And that's why it's as if he says, look here, in this place they are men. Right? Yes. That's why Allah mentions that. And Allah is going to mention more praise in them afterwards. Look. That's not the direct purport of the verse. Let's first talk about this exactly what the verse is saying, right? I understand what you're getting at, and that is correct. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is highlighting, look, that they're men. But the fact that they are these type of people, that's what makes them men worthy of praise. That's what makes them people who have that rujula. Right? And you can have a female that also has those qualities. Right? Like ulama of the study of futuwa. Right? Of yeah, I don't know, like of chivalry. I think that's the appropriate translation for it, right? They will say that knowledge is from the masculine qualities of a person. So can a female have knowledge? Yes, of course. Right? I mean, the hadith tells you like males and females must seek knowledge. But they'll say it's almost like from your manhood. I don't want to get into a discussion about that, right? But what I'm saying is this is referring, you can have females that also have this rujula. So what's the description Allah gives of him? So in this, there are men. So you can see why it's so separate. Even when I say that in this masjid, there are men. It's as if I'm trying to keep it separate, to highlight it, to maintain the focus on them. Right? So a similar thing is happening here in this verse. In these houses which Allah permitted that they be erected and that His name be remembered in them, there are people who remember Him in the mornings and in the evenings. Who are they? They are men. Right? And it's nakira. Why didn't Allah say the men do this? Or a specific group of men and mention who they are? No. Allah left it nakira. Yeah, it's nakira again for ta'zim. It's a case of tankir. The word is made nakira for ta'zim. That's a phenomenon that exists in Arabic. You choose to word a thing in a nakira way to give honor or grandeur to a thing. And there are many other places in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does the same. He in fact does it in relation to himself. Right? So rijalun, they are men. What's the quality of these men? What's the salient feature of these men? لا تلهيهم تجارة ألها يلهي ألهاكم التكاثر, to distract. ألها يلهي, this is from the fourth bab. Yeah, it is tulhi, not yulhi, tulhi. So who's the fa'il of it? Tijaratun. Tijaratun, firstly. Right? So if I look at the end, there's nothing at the end. That him is a dhamir that's attached. That's the maf'ul bihi. The fa'il, if I look to the left, I have tijaratun. So tijaratun la tulhihim. Trade does not distract them. Wala bay'un. So trade is like a mutual activity. I'm buying and I'm selling. No bay'un, just buying things, even for yourself to keep. So neither trade nor does purchasing distract them from what? لا تلهيهم عن ذكر الله, from remembering Allah. وإقام الصلاة, and establishing the prayer. قام يقوم means to stand. إقامة, أقام يقيم, this is the masdar from the fourth bab, إقامة. وإقام الصلاة, and establishing the salah. وإيتاء الزكاة. آتى يؤتي, the fourth bab means to give, right? وإيتاء الزكاة, and giving zakah. So Allah says, the one description of the men is, look, this is one description. لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة. That's the end of the one description. The next description is يَخَافُونَ يَوْمًا تَتَقَلَّبُ فِيهِ الْقُلُوبُ وَالْأَبْصَارُ. يَخَافُونَ, they fear, يَوْمًا, a day. Again, there's again, that word is made nakira for ta'zim. Allah could have said يَخَافُونَ الْيَوْمَ الَّذِي تَتَقَلَّبُ فِيهِ الْقُلُوبُ وَالْأَبْصَارُ. But instead Allah says يَخَافُونَ يَوْمًا. That nakira there is to again highlight that it's a great day. يَوْمًا, what's the quality, what's the description of this day? تَتَقَلَّبُ فِيهِ. What does تَتَقَلَّبُ mean from the fifth bab? To turn. Right? And you know that from the root qalb. So تَتَقَلَّبُ will be turning repeatedly. What will be turning? Or changing all the time? Al-qulubu wal-absaru. So al-qulubu is the actual fa'il, and the ma'tuf, the conjunct, will be al-absaru. And that's why you can see al-qulubu is a plural. That's why it's tataqallabu, not yataqallabu. Right? So يَخَافُونَ يَوْمًا تَتَقَلَّبُ فِيهِ الْقُلُوبُ وَالْأَبْصَارُ. They fear a day in which hearts and gazes will be turning. Right? What's that an indication to? They will be full of fear. They will not have stability or sakina in these states. They'll be in a frantic state. They'll be looking from side to side. Who can help me? Where can I turn? All of those things. And it's referring to the day of Qiyamah. So what are these? Obviously, we learn these sifat so that when Allah describes these people, Allah describes them to praise a group of people, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also does them to teach us what are the qualities we should have. So what are these qualities? Firstly, they find themselves in masajid. Right? They proclaim Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's perfection, they make tasbih. When? Bil-ghudwi wal-asal. Bil-ghudwi wal-asal, it specifically mentions 2 times, but it's a reference to all the time. Right? Yeah. Right? And what else does Allah describe them with? They are not distracted by worldly things. Neither are they distracted by, the coming and going of trade, nor are they distracted by simply having more, meaning acquiring more for themselves, purchasing. And what does it not distract them from? Dhikrillah. Firstly, remembering Allah. Focus is always on Allah. And then what? Iqam as-salah, ita'i az-zakah. Now, why does Allah mention it? Why does Allah mention Hajj? Or other actions? You see, bayna as-salati waz-zakah, there is a coupling of ibadah that pertains to your greatest action, the most virtuous action that you can do in relation to Allah. And zakah is the most beneficial that you can do on account of your worship to Allah for people. It's a compulsory act that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instituted for you to ensure that the society's needs are seen to. Zakah. Remember, this is a Madani surah. Not just specifically spiritual development, but it's a pure ibadah mahda. You don't see a material, it doesn't involve your money. It involves your person and your spiritual activity. And zakah is also an act of ibadah. It's also a ritual act of ibadah. There's a specific form to it. Once a year, 2.5%, given in a certain way, all of those things. But it combines between, it's not just focus, it's Allah and the creation. Right? So, iqam as-salah wa ita'i zakah. So it's speaking about the action in relation to Allah, the action in relation to creation. Right? So they're not distracted by those things. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions their mindset. They are constant. You see, what is the fear of Qiyamah? The fear of Qiyamah is being cognizant of the fact that there are consequences to my actions beyond this world. That's what Qiyamah is about. It's hisab, it's about reckoning. It's about reckoning. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about hisab in the very next verse. لِيَجْزِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنَ مَا عَمِلُوا وَيَزِيدَهُم مِّن فَضْلِهِ وَاللَّهُ يَرْزُقُ مَن يَشَاءُ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. So that jaza over there is referring to the consequences of the action. So Allah says, يَخَافُونَ يَوْمًا تَتَقَلَّبُ فِيهِ الْقُلُوبُ وَالْأَبْصَارُ. They fear that day. But the reward is what? You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always speaks about this in relation to the muttaqeen. For those people that fear the day, Allah gives them calmness on that day. The ones who fear that day, the consequence of the action in this life, on that day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them guarantees. So in the very next verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about it, لِيَجْزِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ, so that Allah can recompense them or reward them. Reward them for what? أَحْسَنَ مَا عَمِلُوا, the best of that which they have done. What does that mean? Allah is not going to, like if you do something that's good, but it's not as good, Allah is not going to reward you for it. No. The reference to أَحْسَنَ مَا عَمِلُوا is, look, when you do good things, you fall short in those good deeds. You make salah, but you're thinking about other things. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only look at the best of what you have put forth. The good that you do with errors in them, Allah will overlook that. So in order that He recompense them for the best of that which amilu they have done, وَيَزِيدَهُم مِّن فَضْلِهِ, and He will increase them in His bounty, meaning Allah is going to give you, you do an action, Allah rewards you for that action. But the reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you is not like commensurate with the action. Allah gives it to you manifold. وَيَزِيدَهُم مِّن فَضْلِهِ وَاللَّهُ يَرْزُقُ مَن يَشَاءُ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. That's what Allah says. And Allah gives rizq to whom so ever He wants. بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ, without reckoning. Without any reckoning. Meaning, بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ, Allah doesn't count what He gives you. When He favors, He's not stingy. He gives without measure. Right? And why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mention this here? Because those people, they also have worldly needs. Those people who لا تلهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله, they still have a need for bay'ah, they still have a need for tijara. You have to live. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, look, Allah gives you rizq without measure. So don't worry about all of it. Don't allow that to distract you. And it also can refer to in the akhirah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide you with His reward beyond measure. Right? So this rizq here, is it referring to dunya or akhirah? It can refer to both. Right? And then in the next part, Allah now goes on to speak about the disbelievers. So in there for now. Any questions? So communication about next week's program. Sister Nasreen will communicate that further with you, inshallah. She might solicit some reflections from people, inshallah. But we're in there for now. Jazakumullahu khairan wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mullah Khalil, just sent the planning document at 11:47, but we'll discuss it next week, inshallah. If there's anything specific in there beyond what I already said today.
Assalamu alaikum, jazakallah khair.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاكم الله خير.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.